So you just opened up your DAW. You want to make music, but you have no idea where to start. I'm not necessarily going to be showing you how to start a track. I mean, I kind of will, but that's not the point of this video. What I kind of really want to touch on is the most important skill that you can use within music production for an electronic producer anyways, and that is the idea of being resourceful. That is an incredibly general term, and there's so many different ways to like identify or to categorize what being resourceful means. But what ends up happening is as you're building a skill set, you start learning these tricks on how to transform sounds into other sounds, especially if you're a sound designer, or you start trying to play with imagination on how to repurpose things outside of their initial intention. So, I think that as a beginner, what a lot of people do is they'll go in and find some kind of loop or whatever, and that's okay. We can see whatever this is. This is some kind of stock thing, and just listen to it. Okay, I've never heard this before, but this is actually a perfect use case. But the thing about it is that if you can start to see things beyond what you're getting at face value, then you can essentially use it to start tracks. You can use it to get you out of a creative rut. You can use it to add in more sounds that you normally wouldn't have sound designed yourself. You can turn this into drums. You can turn this into pads. And there's so many different ways to exemplify how to turn a sound into another sound, or how to recontextualize something that you might hear. So I guess one of the easiest things that I can do is just give you a couple of use cases. But again, the theme about this is that you need to start seeing whatever sounds you have or whatever sounds you're able to make beyond what they just are from face value. And that's why sometimes presets or loop packs or sample packs can be so important, because that's honestly how you start individualizing yourself, or you start really reimagining or really turning something into something else. And the other cool thing too is that this is also a great skill for remixing. So I know that I just did a lot of talking, and we're going to get to cut to the chase here in just a second, but I can't stress this enough about how taking this mindset of turning trash to treasure will benefit you if you embrace it and you practice it as a skill. So before I actually get started, I do want to talk about how to cultivate this, because I think that's probably that's why you're here, right? And so what I challenge you to do is go in through all of your content libraries and stuff and just pick anything and start to change that into something specific that you are aiming for. Not a specific sound, but a specific sound kind. So let's say I want to turn this into a pad. Well, let's go ahead and do that together. So if I listen to this, okay, I just heard a musical thing within this. And so what I can do is a couple of things. One is I don't know what key this is in. So one thing that I'm going to do on here before I start doing anything, I changed my mind. I'm going to stretch this first, and then we'll find the key. So sorry, I'm flying by the seat of my pants, but you all know that this is kind of how I operate. But if I stretch this out and kind of take away the transients on here, and we just loop this, let's go ahead and grab an EQ now, and let's figure out where that fundamental is. So that's kind of chilling at like G sharp 2, right? So what I can do is, now that we have something like this, we can add copious amounts of reverb and all different kinds of stuff really. But check this out. So now what I can do is I can either use rolling sampler up here, as you can see, or we can just do this the Bitwig way. And because I'm not really worried about transients, but I'm just going to hit J, and that's going to bounce this. That's a custom keyboard shortcut. I'll do a video on that in the future at some point. But now what we can do is pull this into a sampler like so, and toss this in here. And now we've created a new pad. And remember, this is kind of sitting around G sharp 2. So or G sharp, so it doesn't really matter, but we can hit G sharp 1 and that'll at least be in key. Might not be the correct octave, but that's okay. So now that we have something like that, let's listen to how this sounds. We can even turn this into a pad by resampling this and setting it to loop. That's a little bit long, or a little bit short. Ah, that's nice. And so now we can implement, you know, other reverbs or something, and you don't need to have fancy reverb plugins. In fact, let's just do the stock device reverb. And to get this a little bit more lush, sometimes putting in wet effects, for example, a wet effect with like a pitch shifter can create a shimmer reverb. If we go here and we go to +12 and maybe back off of the mix and play with the grain size, and maybe play with the size here. Okay, so now we want to crossfade this so that way it's not clicking. And maybe start this from here so that way we're not getting that clicky sound. Or we can start from over here. There we go. Okay, so I was just trying to pull off the click. So basically what we did was we took a loop and we changed this into a pad that we can now use to create lots of cool different stuff. And that sounds awesome. That's just one use case. If we wanted to turn something like this into a bass, we could do that too. If we wanted to repurpose this into you know, a drum, then we can do that too. But the next thing that I wanted to talk about before we talk about any of those other stuff, because I have masterclasses on those like I described, is changing this into a phrase or an idea that we can use to get started. We kind of already did ourselves a favor because we actually did a very simple process, which was we just pitched this out and stretched it. But this is actually, you know, a brand new loop if we just listen to this on repeat. So I really like this because it already kind of has motion in it. It already has something that kind of seems like it has percussive qualities as well. So what I can do is find something else in here that sounds like percussion. I can even just take something like this, and I'm not really worried about everything else per se. And like, this is very basic sound design. It's just, you know, manipulation of audio and stuff. But what we can do with this is start to stretch this out or play with different timings of this in order to create a rhythmic piece. You guys know that I make halftime. I love to make like really wonky and swingy beats and stuff. So I'll be showing you more so how to do things of that nature. But, you know, if you want to quantize this or put it into a straight rhythm or something, that's actually easier to do than what I'm going to be showing you. So that actually sounds kind of cool. So now you hear how that kind of sounds like a kick? So we might not want to put that on the 2, but maybe if we move it off just a little bit. Okay. So this kind of sounds like a hi-hat. And now what we can do is we can start to create a rhythm with this, and maybe just move this off grid a little bit and then repeat this, and let's see what that sounds like. Now we've got some kick in there and we don't want that. So now what we'll do is start moving this off. And now what we can do, because we have something that's kind of like a loop, is we can start to take this and make big sneeze, I'm sorry. We can actually change this. So I just bounced this, so that way now we can pitch this again. But what happens if I change just this into one semitone? So So now what we can do is we can find something that kind of sounds like a clap or a snare or something. All right, so there we go. And I'm not going to go into how to, turn this stuff into drums and stuff in this video in particular. But the thing is that even if you can get kind of close, or you can have something that kind of sounds like either a kick or a snare, then it doesn't really matter, because you can always replace this with something else. So let's say like this is just placement or something. And then you're like, I don't like this anymore. Well, you can just go and type in a clap or something. That would work too, and then you can just replace that where these sounds are. So don't worry so much about the tonal qualities. This is more for idea building. This is about the idea about being resourceful with starting a track. So let's take out that fundamental. And then let's go ahead and just add some saturation to this. Maybe a little bit of transient shaping. Cool, let's go ahead and search through this and find something that kind of sounds like a kick. Okay, there's our kick. So we can, again, play around with different pitching and stuff on this, right? So if we set this, that's in stretch mode, but if we set it to repitch, okay, we don't want to do that, but let's maybe set this to something here where it's like, okay, I know that I said that I wasn't going to talk about making drums, but we're just going to make this a little bit more drum-like. I'll give you all kind of a taste of how I start to get into making drums out of anything. Long story short, I do have a video on Saturn II, which I would highly recommend. Yeah, buddy. So we can find where that fundamental is. And I'm not quite happy with this, so I'm gonna actually, what I'm gonna do is and again, like I said, like I'm just moving, right? I'm just trying to make stuff into other things and trying to create something out of nothing. And I'm showing you this in context, and I know that this isn't really teaching you something specific, and that's not really what I want you to get out of this video in general. But at the same time, you can see that I just pulled in a random loop and just started working. And you can do this with anything, but you have to practice that skill set of how do I manipulate any kind of source material into something else? How do I transform sound? And the short answer is that you do have to build up a skill set of fundamentals, but once you understand the fundamentals, then you can start to shape and morph things into very unique stuff. And I don't know if you've noticed or not, but I haven't really done a whole lot of processing on this like I usually do in order to, get things, in order to get an idea started. It's just very basic, manipulation of audio for the most part, and maybe some simple transient shaping, but this is stuff that, you can do at a beginner level. But the cool thing about it is that once you kind of see something outside of what it could be and you have a sense of exploration, then that's when you're really going to find a lot of unique sounds that also take you out of the idea of, hey, I need to design something specific. I need to, how do you say, I need to make a kick, I need to make a snare, I need to make a bass. It's like, no, you need to know how to, in my opinion, you need to know how to mess with stuff. You need to know how to, this is almost like a video on how to trial and error. And again, the only way to really cultivate this is to build up some fundamentals and then start to take case studies like any loop, whatever, and start to try to make stuff out of it. I do think that this is going to open up your creative side no matter what. The key to it though is that you can't just make the sounds. You really have to try to work on the application part. And what I mean by that is really try to throw an idea together. It doesn't need to be a fully blown song and you have to make a song with just a sine wave, which I've done before. It's not very much fun, to be honest, because it's just so basic. What I mean by basic is that you have one single harmonic and you have to build everything with distortion and whatnot. It's a good challenge, but it's not that much fun. But when you have some kind of loop, whether it be melodic or percussive or both or something, take a song and remix it, like take a loop of a song and do like a pseudo remix to where you start making different sounds out of what you can pull out from that song. You see what I'm saying? But it teaches you how to be resourceful. It teaches you how to make anything work. This idea didn't come to me inherently. It's something that my peers and I have talked about. It's something that I've gained insight from lessons from people that I've done before. And if you've ever seen, Chi is a great example. He's got a masterclass on Alckemy, and I've been fortunate enough to have a conversation or two with him. And if you watch him work, he can turn anything into anything. And I'm not trying to use it as a means of name dropping, but just as a means of where this inspiration comes from. And it's pretty remarkable to see how much better he can do it than I can. But also this is like a means of expanding yourself and like not getting caught up in like, oh, I don't have the sounds available. I need to go search for it on Splice. I need to go whatever. Like everything that you need is right in front of you. You just have to, what does he say? Oseo says you have to give in to the creative side. You have to give in, and you have to be willing to sit down with some of this stuff and try to, cultivate how to put your messes together. This is like a casserole. Casserole is usually just a hodgepodge of different ingredients and stuff, and you got to figure out how to casserole your songs. This is just one way to make music. You could definitely go and like record high professional drums and guitar and all that stuff and whatever. But for me, this has been one of the most fun processes that I've ever learned with music production. And sorry, not trying to be like tangential and, do too much talking or whatever. Hopefully that's why you're here. But it's such an amazing and liberating feeling whenever you can just be like, yeah, I can just, we're going to make a kick out of this. It might not be a great kick, but that's my intent because that's what I want this to be. And so we're going to use our alchemy. No, sorry. We're going to use basically, audio alchemy to transform something that is kind of lame into something that's a little bit better. So, and sometimes you have to do this process multiple times, but that's just kind of part of it. So with this kick, again, I'm not really super keen on explaining what I'm doing, but I'm just trying to create a transient out of it. There we go. And now that we have something like that, we can add a little bit of saturation to this. And now we've got a nice kick. So what we can do is start to listen to this rhythm for a second and place kicks accordingly and create a beat. So beatboxing and audiation is such a helpful tool. If you don't know what that is, Google it. It's in Music Academia. It's something that Corey had taught me. But okay, let's go ahead and toss that in. Almost, not quite there. So now we just need to mess with this because I'm picky with rhythm, but maybe we can make both of these late so that way they still hit on time, but they're a little bit offset. So nice. And then what we can do is we can duplicate this and just delete that. And now we've got ourselves a cool little groove. And I'm not really concerned about like the quality of how this sounds. I'm not really concerned about like, this sounding incredible with whatever, because it doesn't take that much in order for you to transform these sounds, and you can always replace them with higher quality sounds or whatever. This is just a way that I'm using this to sketch. And because of that, I'm not really so concerned with, why did my sound suck or whatever, because the composition is always going to be king. I'm pretty sure that in my interview with Frequent, if you haven't watched that already, I'd highly recommend it. But in that interview, I was talking about, or he was talking about rather, like a sound is only as good as it is in context when it comes to music, and because of that, if you kind of just like let all that go and not really worry so much about how everything sounds right now, then your compositions that you have will be forced to be better because you have to make the arrangement interesting, you know? If you make a really cool sound, and I struggle with this for years, like that doesn't mean that you're going to make good music. Likewise, you can make crazy bangers with just sine waves, or like with just plucks, or with just 808 kits, right? Like there's some people that I know that are making music on their phone that aren't even using koala sample or anything. They're just using like BS synthesizers and stuff, and it sounds great because they have a lot of musicality. Will help you get out of I have to sound design and help you get into how do I create compositions out of randomly sourced material. So now all I'm doing is kind of tossing this into my template. Great. So now what we can do is we can say, okay, well now we need more stuff. And there's so many different ways to go about this. Let's go ahead and source a bass actually. I think that would be useful. So we took this and we have not bounced the entire thing. So this is in key. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold Option and Command. And you'll see that there's this little thing right here, and we're going to find something that sounds kind of bassy. Or what we can even do is we can go back to this guy and create a duplicate of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off of the reverb on this, and I'm just going to listen to how this sounds on the low end. So we're playing G sharp, I believe. So let's go ahead and move this here, and maybe add some distortion to this. What do I want to do here? Let's add some newfangled saturate. Excuse me, I'm still recovering, I apologize. So maybe there's something else through here. Okay, that's all right. This is the most tonal thing that I can find. So because of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up an EQ in here. And I'm actually going to isolate that fundamental here and pull this up just a bit. Okay, now let me look at this on a stereo field. And when it comes to bass design and stuff, like I do think that it's important to, let me just demo it. Okay, see how we have a bunch of motion here? So let's see what happens if we were to just take a tool and toss this into mono. That's just one thing that you can do, but it doesn't matter. There we go. So now because of this, we can start to push this a little harder. And the most important thing whenever you're trying to create bass out of stuff like this is, can you identify a tone? And one of the best ways to do that is to pitch it up. And to me, I can hear that, ooh. So because of that, we can continue to add more distortion, or we can continue to, you know, shape this bass in all different kinds of ways that we want to. I know I'm going overboard, it's okay, but we're just going to kind of overdo it and then back off of it. So that seems a little bit easier to identify. So let's see if we can kind of create something. right now I'm kind of just messing around, and this is part of it. You kind of have to just like let yourself, you know, listen to how this sounds and continue to try to find something that may or may not work. And I might end up just going back to this, which is okay too. So if we look at this pass and EQ now, there we go. Can you hear the tone? So now what we can do is, this is relatively high, so let me just listen to this. Okay, so with this, there's a couple of options that we can do. We can resample this if we want to which we can actually just pull this tone out even more. So if you, because sometimes like just using this as is may not make it usable, but you can see that there's an identifiable tone on this now. And so because of that, what we can do now is we can pull this out just like this, and you'll see that we've actually got a sub now. And with this sub, there's a few things that we can do, but most importantly, we can just use this in audio, or we can keep it in MIDI. Doesn't really matter, but we can turn this down just a little bit. So let's go here. And now you can see that by resampling that and then tossing it back in, we've created a much bigger tone. And there's a lot of different ways that we can control that now, but you can see that from building this, yeah, that's nice. It's kind of crazy how it's like almost singing. There we go. It's cracking because of the sidechain. So, I mean, even if we just keep this here, or even if we just do like a pulse, kind of like so. You know, or we can actually create a rhythm with this. So we can go like, let me move this over a bit and fade that in. We can do like an octave, so like a... Okay, so we just ran into a problem here because that EQ is cutting it off so hard. So what we're going to do is we're going to go J and bounce this out, turn this off, and now because we move this to a new track and it doesn't have all the EQs over it, we can pitch this how we want to, and it's going to sound a little different. So right, so we can move this over here and move that over there, fade that in, we can do something like that too. Don't worry about the clicks. Again, that's from the sidechain. That looks like a middle finger. That's pretty funny. Or we can go down an octave again and see if we can find that fundamental. That's actually kind of cool. What we might be able to do is compress this really hard. Nice. And send this into 6 bands. Try 3. Try 2. Cool. And now what we can do with this, because it's kind of like just like a tone, is we can add like some chorus or something to it, because it's not like necessarily like a bass anymore. It's just kind of like a interesting thing. But see what I'm talking about? It's kind of just exploring and being like, oh, well, what can we do with this? And then we would probably want to turn it down a bit. So sick. Now, if you recall, we also have this guy right here that we can use in order to play other melodies. So we can play keys, we can make chords with it, we can do a lot of different stuff with it. One, two, 3, 4, 5. Now the other thing too is that we don't have to stick with this, right? Because we have a beat that's already like, we have a bass line and we have a beat, we can kind of use this as an intro or something, and we can just use this as an idea. But then when we move this over, we can actually pull this off, and then we can go into something that changes the rhythm and create a B section from this. So we can do something that's just like, maybe something that's like a pulse, and then we can actually play some kind of melody that's within that G sharp key. So da da da. And then we can kind of just make that longer and just create, you know, a different kind of idea. It doesn't need to be incredible, but okay, so maybe on this section we want it to be a little bit more interesting. Well, as opposed to going and surfing for more loops, like you absolutely can, what we might be able to do is take something like this, and let's go ahead and just bounce that out. And then what we want to do is we want to normalize it. So let's go ahead and focus on this. Well, let's go ahead and create a shaker out of this. And what I'm going to do is just create a fade, kind of like so. And then I'm going to stretch this out and change this into repitch mode. So I kind of like the timbre of that. And now if we kind of just duplicate this, actually I'm going to do in increments of 4 because we want to create a rhythm with this, but okay. So what we can do is we can actually move this over here and actually take away that transient so it doesn't sound so like hi-hatty. And now what we can do is we can play around with moving these off just a little bit and creating a rhythm. So we can also play with you know, like volume or velocity and stuff, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to grab and do one of my favorite tricks, which is panning this. And so we're just going to move this up and move this down and move this up and move this down, and then I'm going to hit 2, duplicate this, and then now you can tell already that it's now got that really nice swing to it. Now what we can also do is just take this little note, and then we can still keep that same phrase of that. So maybe this is a good starting point, but it doesn't sound as cool. Well, you know, we can do other things too, like perhaps just nice and easy, we can create a transcade or something. I was thinking about just trying to stick with like Bitwig stock effects, but dude, come on. At this point, it's fine. But what we can do is pull the sustain down and pull the decay up, and listen to this. That's cool. Maybe we can pitch this up an octave because everything is kind of on that low end. And then we can maybe set this to something that like cluster delay or something, and give this a little bit more motion. So and maybe on this one we can use a fuse compressor. Cool. Now that sounds interesting, but let's go ahead and take that one step further by adding a time delay, or time shift rather, and moving this a little bit off. And we're going to do the same thing with these hats and stuff too. We already did that with the hats, but maybe we can do this with the shakers. So try to create a little bit more motion. And then we can also kind of mess around and do that with maybe this. We can also mess around and maybe do this with the basses as well. Just, you know, just try stuff. So maybe not that much, but maybe just a little bit. So now check this out. So maybe what we can do is, because I'm kind of hearing like a cool little like bling, 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 bling. Sorry for lack of whatever. So we can use this as well to kind of move this over and maybe take something that might be kind of tonal. So let's go ahead and check this out. Let's go ahead and pull the cluster delay back on here. That's kind of cool. So now what we can do is kind of like that one. So we can kind of create another rhythm here. And just kind of move this off just a little bit. And duplicate that. Open that up. Let's listen to this. Not quite. Let's go ahead and move these two off just a little bit more. Add some chorus to it. Sorry I'm not talking much more, but hopefully you're starting to get the idea about like how I write music. And this is kind of, you know, just, and this is applies to any genre, but it's about taking one single thing and being able to create, you know, some kind of tune out of it. That's nice. And where we started was this. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I do think that sound selection is really important and all that stuff, but as a means of cultivating, you can do this with anything. Before we end this video, I think that I'm going to just show you demo 2 some other use cases on how I've done this, because I did this on yesterday's stream. So if we look at this demo class thing, I made all these different ideas, and like I said, I don't think that any of these are necessarily particularly like, you know, oh, look at me, I made a banger or anything like that. But taking any kind of sound and turning it into, you know, anything is really the goal. And I can't really tell you like specifically how to do that, but I can show you like some examples and can say like, hey, this is the direction that I would encourage you to explore if you're a sound designer. So this is an 808 beat. And I think what we did was we took just this whole thing, if I'm not mistaken, and let me turn the processing off on this. And this is what we made, or this is what we started with. So if we back off of this and we take a look at what we have going on here and move this over, we started with pretty much this, or this is what it kind of came about. example, but you know, same thing with this. Like this was some kind of bounce or Atmos Metro. I think that, hold on, let me see if I can figure out where that initial sound was. But I think that what we did was we just took Atmo Met 33. So let me see if I can, here it is. So Atmos Metro. So we took this sound, and then what I did was I separated this into different transients and stuff, and we ended up creating several different riffs from this. So check this one out. This is what this became. And then we also have this one. This 118 engine bounce started from this, so. And then we ended up making this out of it. And really, like I said, like these are all just idea starters, but you can change this stuff into anything. I don't remember what this was exactly, but I think that it was something from here. I think what I was doing was I was resampling the Never engine, and then I found something that sounded like a cool riff. I think it's right here. Yeah, so just taking different stuff on this, if we turn this off, like here's just a bunch of hodgepodge, you know, mud pies or whatever. Okay, that's actually a riff right there. So check this out. We can take everything from these drums over here and apply it to this riff as well. So I know that this is going to work. You can make a beat out of anything. And really the point of this whole video is to just relay excuse me, how my imagination works and how I try to cultivate hearing this through anything. If you can loop it, then you can turn it into a beat. And I would say as soon as you hit the first spark of inspiration, whenever you're searching for stuff like this, act upon it, make some kind of idea out of it, and you know, utilize that. Because all of these beats that I've made as of recent, if you look at this, Dim Lights, Blankets No Longer Anti Hooligan, Day 15, all this stuff, like this was all from resampling. This was all from purposing, making something, like repurposing a completely different concept into something brand new. So, you know, just one more example. If you look at this here, let me see. This is just a stupid melody. And what I did was I sent it through a bunch of effects and stuff, and what I ended up getting was this riff right here, from resampling and bouncing it out. And what I ended up doing was making a beat out of that, and this is what it became. It's dark. If you're still here, let me know what your favorite plugin is. But hopefully this can give you some kind of insight into how I go about making music and about how I start thinking about things. And just as some philosophy, the liberating thing behind this is that I don't really think about trying to make specific sounds anymore. The reason why I have presets and stuff is because I give you a starting point that is organic and is not a sample, that allows you to build upon this workflow that has been taught to me and I've gone through and like taken and refined. So, you know, if you have Faceplant or Bitwig, I'm currently building an Ableton project right now. You can take all these ideas and like, you know, make riffs or make, you know, different loops of your own, or just make complete trash and garbage and start to utilize that in order to repurpose all the stuff that you have. So this would be the final phase, is making your own material in which to apply the same process. And that's kind of what I do. But if you listen to this, even if you just take a single tone, you can start to manipulate this and get different sounds in order to start playing around with and resampling and repurposing. So, you know, if we just play F, I recommend keeping everything in key. And so now, through all that stuff that I just made, we can start to take any of that in here and just pull it out and start messing with it. And once you have something like that, you can get to the cutting board and start, you know, like, yes, I'm teaching you how to make mud pies, but I'm trying to help you understand how you can start to manipulate mud pies and how to, again, the theme of it is more so about being resourceful and hearing things that can become something else, as opposed to how do I just make random sounds. So yeah, hopefully that was interesting to you. You can check out alchemy.com if you own Faceplanner or Bitwig. I'll let you know when the Ableton version is ready. But yeah, this is how I make tunes, and I really enjoy doing this process. And if you want to know more about how I make these tunes with the masterclasses, then check out my ARCANUM memberships. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any questions or anything, and hopefully you're able to sit through this, as I think that this is an extremely, I wish I would have had this insight when I was cultivating in my earlier years, because this would have helped me so much. And I do think that if you embrace this skill and embark on this journey, it's going to take you way further than how to sound like Skrillex or how to recreate other people's stuff, because this is way more fun anyways. Anyways, thank you all so much. I appreciate it, and I will see you all in the next one.